Now let's go to Nancy Pelosi. What role did she play? Uncovered HBO video footage. In 2022, Home Box Office released a documentary film, Pelosi in the House, focused on the life and career of Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi. This documentary film was directed and produced by her daughter, Alexandra. The documentary included footage of Speaker Pelosi and members of the House and Senate leadership after being evacuated from the Capitol complex on January 6, 2021. The Select Committee was in possession of Alexandra Pelosi's footage throughout their investigation. However, the Select Committee did not publicly release any of the video, and furthermore, did not archive this footage at the end of the 117th Congress, the Democrats, or hand it over when Republicans took majority in the House of Representatives in 2023. Despite attempts to conceal the footage, Chairman Loudermilk, who will be on this program in moments, secured various clips from HBO containing candid details regarding the events and individuals at the U.S. Capitol on January 6. On May 23, 2024, Loudermilk wrote to HBO and they got the information. The footage, which the Select Committee chose to conceal from the public, conceal its release, contains shocking new information regarding Speaker Pelosi's movements and communication on January 6. In one clip, while being evacuated from the Capitol, Speaker Pelosi takes responsibility for the lack of security at the U.S. House. In a very panicked exchange, Speaker Pelosi admits to her chief of staff, Terry McCullough, that she bears responsibility for not having adequate security. No, it's not a question of how they don't know, they clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more, meaning the National Guard and security generally. And prior to January 6th, the U.S. Capitol Police Chief was required by law to receive approval from the Capitol Police Board before directly requesting assistance from the D.C. National Guard. This requirement caused significant delays in the deployment of the National Guard and therefore delayed law enforcement's efforts to secure the Capitol. And there's an entire section on the Pentagon that is shocking. What did the Pentagon know and when did it know it? Finding one, the acting Secretary of Defense, Christopher Miller, dismissed President Trump, as the report says, January 3, 2021 order to use any and all military assets necessary to ensure safety for the planned demonstrations on January 6. That's where President Trump told his acting defense secretary, do we need National Guard? I'll call up National Guard. We got to make sure it's protected. Finding one by this committee says he ignored it. Finding two, the Secretary of the Army, Ryan McCarthy, intentionally delayed, from the report, the D.C. National Guard response to the U.S. Capitol on January 6. Although approved by the Secretary of Defense at 3:04 p.m., Secretary McCarthy delayed and failed to communicate deployment orders to the commanding general of the D.C. National Guard. So they're sitting there for hours. Finding number three, at 3:18 p.m. on January 6, Secretary of the Army, Ryan McCarthy, deliberately deceived, they write in the report, congressional leaders by stating the D.C. National Guard was physically moving to the Capitol. With full knowledge these forces had yet to receive any orders. The false statements contributed to decisions made by congressional leaders regarding the security response to the Capitol. Finding four by the Loudermilk Committee. The Department of Defense Inspector General published a flawed report that contains fabricated information, ignores crucial information, fails to interview key individuals, and appears to have collaborated with the DOD to portray false narrative. They had scores of whistleblowers from the National Guard and other parts of the Pentagon coming to this committee to tell them that IG report was BS. Finding five, DOD and DOD-IG knowingly and inaccurately placed blame on the D.C. National Guard leadership for the delayed response. Finding six, DOD-IG was not responsive to the subcommittee's requests and at times obstructed the subcommittee's work. The subcommittee has detected an inappropriately close relationship between the DOD Inspector General and the DOD, which compromises the Inspector General's ability to conduct objective oversight. No wonder they don't want Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of Defense. We got a good old boys and a good old girls network there. What about the Secret Service? Our fantastic Secret Service, where were they? The number that were able to come inside was limited. And the Secret Service were there to protect the Vice President of the United States. The counter-assault team, or CAT, was outside the building and did not enter when it was breached because they didn't know the layout of the Capitol. Complete screw-up. Secret Service either did not receive or did not heed any intelligence products about the threats to the U.S. Capitol on January 6, including the FBI Norfolk report, the Postal Inspection Service report. Secret Service Protective Intelligence Division's personnel marched for Trump. That brief did not include any indications of potential civil disobedience. Secret Service guidance did not include instruction on what exterior areas should be swept by canine for buildings like the DNC, and it goes on and on. This is the real January 6th report, and you'll notice it says it's the initial report. And this committee, this Pelosi, disgusting Stalinist Cheney committee, they went on to allege violations of 4 criminal statutes by President Trump in both the run-up to the riot and during the insurrection itself, as they called it. They recommended the former president for prosecution to the Department of Justice. They recommended conspiracy to defraud the United States, obstruction of an official proceeding of Congress, conspiracy to make a false statement, and aiding an insurrection. None of those charges were brought. Some of them were included in some of the comments by the rogue prosecutor Smith. They also shared information with Fani Willis, who's now been pulled off that case in Atlanta. You see what's taking place here? There needs to be a federal grand jury under a new U.S. attorney, or yes, a special counsel, to investigate whether and or the extent to which members of Congress on this committee and their staffers and witnesses who testified under oath committed federal offenses. This is not covered by the speech and debate clause, as I explained last week. This is way outside Congress's lane when they're trying to influence a criminal investigation, trying to cause a criminal investigation, trying to prevent a Donald Trump, disqualify him for running for president again. You want to talk about an insurrection? You want to talk about a coup? This report, that committee, that's an insurrection. That's a coup. This is a grotesque attack on the American system. And this isn't about retribution. This is about getting it right and fixing it. That January 6th committee was the most outrageous committee, certainly in modern American history, if ever. I'll be right back.